But just once again, while we have a couple minutes here, I just wanted to show again some love to our partners and our sponsors. Again, this is our website, which has the schedule for the day, but also you can see here, Zebra Technologies is our presenting sponsor, and then all of our sponsoring partners, Avanti Wavelink, Dewforms, Honeywell, Ingram Micro, Geotab, Bluestar, IMPINJ, DataLogic, ScanSource, all of us coming together and ultimately being able to support with the Material Handling Education Foundation's Richard R. Dilling Fund, the American Logistics Aid Network, Allen, and then also Food Banks Canada. So great work to everyone for helping us out there. So thank you. Okay, great. Well, that was a great conversation with our president, and we've got a power-packed afternoon. So I think at this point, if you are like Shane and you haven't had lunch, maybe you're on the Central Time Zone or the West Coast Time Zone, feel free to pop up and get those. I just refilled my coffee, so that's always a good thing to do. And feel free to kind of pop in and out as we go. So thanks for popping that link in the chat. Pat Riggles, you're here. Thank goodness, because I don't think I'm prepared to talk in depth about RFID yet. So thank you for joining us. Pat Riggles is our Director of RFID and IoT for Barcoding Inc. And then we have Todd Farley, who's going to be joining from IMPINJ. So Todd, if you're out there, whenever you're ready, just go ahead and jump on the video. And we have about 5 minutes. So what do you guys want to talk about? It's really like our NPR moment. Pat, you want to tell us why you're a supply chain geek?
Ooh, I would be a supply chain geek, I think, because of the details. I think if you're the kind of person that's ready to dive into the details and find out not just that something works, but how it works, I think that makes you a geek.
That's awesome. I always ask this from RFID engineers, but what's the craziest RFID implementation you've ever attempted?
Wow. Okay. There's been a few of them. The craziest might have been with the personalities that were involved with a marijuana distribution facility in Washington State. That would probably take the cake.
I'm assuming there's not a lot more details that are going to be shared on that story, but that's good.
Keep that quiet.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Jennifer, did you have a supply chain geek answer? Had you been thinking about it?
Well, Jody and I always talk about the supply chain geeks, and I think anytime I go to the big shows, I'm most excited about all the robots, and so we're always talking about all the fun robots. Yay! Oh, we've got Todd driving. I think Todd was having some issues, so I think we've got him here. Yay!
I figured it out. I'm the slow one on Zoom. I hope maybe I have the most interesting background as well. I've got the car background.
Yes. As long as you're not moving, we're okay with it.
I am not moving. My family is doing a road trip to some of the national parks, and so I pulled over. I sent them into a grocery store, and I'm just sitting in a parking lot in the car.
Stop it. That is amazing. Hopefully, everyone in the audience can see what lengths our supply chain geeks will go to be here today. Thank you, Todd. That's great. Okay, well, I am going to say let's make a command decision since you're on the road to a national park. Let's go ahead and start a couple minutes early. And Pat, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you and Todd, and we'll have a great engaging conversation. Maybe first both introduce yourselves. Sure,
very good. I'll start real quick. My name's Pat Riggles. As Jody mentioned earlier, Director of RFID Solutions here at Barcoding. Been with the company 3.5 years and enjoying every bit of it. I'll let you go, Todd.
Great, thanks, Pat. My name's Todd Farley, and I'm with IMPINJ. My role at IMPINJ is I'm the Vice President of the Americas. So I get the privilege of managing a team that works with partners like Barcoding to bring our technology to market. And just if I introduce IMPINJ real quickly, IMPINJ, what we do is we bring a digital life to everyday items, and the way we do that is through RAIN RFID, or ultra high frequency passive RFID. And we make the silicon that goes into the tags. We make reader chips that go into other people's handheld readers, printers. We make fixed readers and purpose-built readers. So we really are the world's leader when it comes to RAIN RFID.
Very good, very good. I think many on the call already are well aware of IMPINJ as one of the industry leaders, but appreciate the run through there. Since today is the Supply Chain Geek Day, Todd, I'll have to ask you one question that you probably hasn't been asked before, and that's is today the first day that you've been recognized as a geek?
You know, I wish I could say it is the first day, but unfortunately it's not. Growing up, I was a geek pretty often.
Very good, very good. So I'll just jump into a few questions with you, if you don't mind. Based on your conversations with your customers, what are the biggest challenges that supply chain and logistics companies face?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we have the opportunity to have lots of different conversations with companies, and I would say that the central theme that we see consistently is all about efficiencies. Companies that we're talking to, there's so many demands that are put on them. I've got to do more with the same square footage. I've got to do more with the same labor that I have. I've got to do more within the same budget that I have. And when you start thinking about all those things and what all those have to, kind of the synonyms for those, is it really comes down to, I've got to do more efficiently. And that's been the common theme that we hear, whether it's a small supply chain company, a mid-size, or a mega company. It really all is about driving efficiency. And that's really kind of the theme that we hear consistently.
Okay, very good. And so as you mentioned, efficiencies, how do you see RAIN RFID technologies being used to solve those challenges? What are the operational processes that improve with RAIN RFID?
Yeah, and I think the way you ask the question is a fantastic way to ask it, because when we think about RAIN RFID, it really is about identifying those specific processes. One of the things that I've seen over the years is initially so many companies tried to look at RFID as a replacement of the barcode, and the reality is it's not. It's an augmentation of it to bring efficiencies within certain processes. And so I think the way you asked that question was brilliant, because it really is about finding specific processes that make sense to insert the technology. And if we think specifically about what some of those processes are, maybe I'll walk through just a couple examples of where we're seeing companies leverage the technology to drive efficiencies specifically at those processes. One thing I would say is on conveyor lines. We're seeing the technology being used quite frequently. When you think about a barcode's great. The challenge is you got to have line of sight. And so if you don't have the technology to be able to correctly orient the package on that conveyor belt, it can be a challenge. And so some operations have that ability, some operations don't. For those that don't, RFID can be a wonderful technology because you don't have to have line of sight. And so regardless of the orientation of that label, when it's going down that conveyor belt, I can read it. And we can accomplish that. And so that's one example where we see the technology really driving efficiencies. Another example would be at dock doors. When you have items either coming in or coming out of your facility, being able to capture that, whether that's at a pallet level, whether that's at a carton level. I probably wouldn't suggest doing it at an item level, but at a pallet or at a carton level, you can drive significant efficiencies at the dock door to be able to read what's coming in or what's going out. And then the third example that I would use in the supply chain is more of what I'll call just a general asset tracking, whether that's in the yard for yard management, whether that's high value assets that you have within your facility, but being able to leverage the technology to track that and to be able to know where it is, when it was last seen there, who was the last person or organization to touch it, and just having that breadcrumb trail can be really, really valuable. So again, there's other examples, but if I was just going to call out a few, I'd really focus on those three of the conveyance systems, the dock doors, both inbound and outbound, as well as just general asset tracking.
Yeah, those are all really good examples, and you know, the dock door verification seems particularly powerful to me. It's something that I'm really excited about digging into further and exploring and providing you know, quick ROI to our customers, to where, you know, the comfort level of knowing that that truck is 100% accurate. Well, I'm in RFID, so I'll say 99.5% accurate during you know, before it leaves the dock would seem to be a big advantage to many customers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just one other thing I'd maybe add on the dock door is it's fascinating. We have seen many companies integrate the technology out the dock door, and there's really two things. You have one camp which was maybe doing very limited scanning at the dock door to begin with. And so the benefit they see is in accuracy, to be able to know that the right items got loaded on the right trailer that's going to the right location. There's other companies that we've worked with who do a scan to load process today. And so for them, the amount of increased accuracy they're going to get if they're already doing a scan to load process is really small. But the reality is the amount of efficiency that they'll gain in terms of throughput is tremendous. And we just worked on a deployment with a customer where they saw a 30% increase in their throughput of loading at the dock door, moving from a scan to load process to then having an automated process where the RFID system was reading at the dock door. And so you start thinking about that benefit and what that means, right? 30% more that I can load in a given time frame, and you can do the association based on labor, based on total items that you could load. There's so many different values, and so whether it's accuracy or whether it's efficiency, it can be really beneficial.
Yeah, it's really compelling. I'll mention real quick too, if anyone has questions and answers, or questions that you want answers to go ahead and put those in the Q&A window, and when we get done with our conversation here, we'll try and address those as well. So Todd, what are some of the lessons learned from, you know, throughout this pandemic, and what do you think our customers should be better prepared? What should we be doing to be better prepared to the new normal?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting question, and it's one that I think gets brought up quite a bit these days. I think a couple things that I would say. Number one, I think the biggest thing that we've seen is there's not a whole lot of new things that have been brought up, but what it's really done is it's really highlighted the needs to have efficiencies and the needs to potentially change your business. I mean, if you're a big box organization, right, and you're moving lots of items, right, those types of operations, the pandemic has stressed them to the core. If you're a smaller retailer or you're someone smaller, it was a significant negative impact to you, because your volumes maybe just dried up to very small. And either way, understanding how you drive efficiencies within your operation is critical. If you're the big box person who's now having to do tremendously more volume, that efficiency is critical. If you're that organization who in your supply chain, maybe your volumes dried up, if you had a lot of overhead or excess or fat, that's challenging. And so what we've really seen throughout the pandemic is really that focus on an incremental efficiencies. It really surprised me how many customers continue to engage in dialogues and in discussions throughout the pandemic. And I should say we're still, depending on where you live, potentially in the pandemic. But efficiency, kind of where we started, is kind of the main theme that we continue to hear as we talk to customers. It's really focused on I have to maximize everything that I'm doing to the nth degree, because it's so important, whether I'm doing it because I'm maxed out or whether I'm doing it because I'm slower. Either way, I have to be incredibly efficient to drive the top line revenue or the bottom line margin, and it's critical. And so I think to us, I would say it's probably not a whole lot of new things that have been seen, but a lot of the really shining a flashlight on some of the topics that maybe have come up. And we've had numerous customers talk to us about, you know what, maybe my project that I was working on was delayed, but this pandemic has absolutely highlighted or shown the flashlight on why we need to drive efficiency and why RAIN RFID can potentially help in these specific areas and solve these specific processes.
Very good, very good. And while we're on the subject of the pandemic, how has IMPINJ navigated the? Did we lose? Oh no, Todd's still there. Todd, I think I lost your video. Oh,
okay,
there you go.
I am here now.
Yep. As we're on the topic of the pandemic, how has IMPINJ navigated? Has it created development delays or product availability issues?
Yeah, it's I would say a couple things for us. So as at IMPINJ, we're a manufacturer, and so we manufacture, as I mentioned, we call it endpoint ICs, which go into the RFID tags. We develop reader chips that go into printers and handhelds and wearables, and then we developed fixed readers that are either can be mounted or be portable. So we develop all those. So for us, it's really forced us to think hard and get creative. I mean, we're dealing with some of the same challenges that many of our clients do when they think about the supply chain, because our supply chain extends from Asia to the U.S. to Mexico, and so for us, it's really it's been a fun learning experience. There's been times where it's absolutely been challenging, no doubt. I think we've weathered the storm fairly well, and we as a company feel incredibly fortunate that we have weathered the storm the way we've been able to. But we're not immune, and it's definitely put pressures on us and made us think about, okay, what are we doing today? Is that the right answer? Or are there things that we should be optimizing and driving efficiencies or potentially changing or thinking twice about? I would say that's on a business side, that's really what it's been. On a more, I'll say, a humanity side, it's been a really interesting and I think a beneficial thing for us as a company to really be thinking about how do we serve others, and whether that's our partners, or whether that's end customers, what are things we can be doing throughout this pandemic to serve others? And that's something that's been a focal point for IMPINJ. My hope is that we've done that successfully, but I think it's going to be an ongoing thing that we continue to try to do as we navigate COVID-19 and get through it on the other side. But is how do we continue just to make sure that we're servicing, supporting, and serving our partners and end customers that we are working together with.
Very good, very good. And shifting gears just a little bit, Barcoding is happy to be a part of the early adopters program for the new IMPINJ R700 reader. We're currently working toward integrating that into our solution, our RealView asset tracking solution. In what are there some specific ways that you see this product having a direct impact, to the customers?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Maybe I'll just start real quickly and just maybe explain what the R700 is for those on the phone that may not know what it is, and then maybe I'll get to your question, Pat.
Sure.
So the R700, it's a fixed RFID reader, and when we say it's a fixed RFID reader, it's an RFID reader that you can then plug discrete antennas into, and you can plug up to 32 antennas into the R700, and so that essentially gives you one reader that then can have 32 different read points on it. So, and then obviously that then would shoot data to the business application, and which is going to be where you kind of get the value out of the information and the data. So that's what the R700 is we think about what's new about it, and then maybe I'll kind of highlight what's new, and then I'll highlight kind of why does that matter, and how does that benefit customers. So if we think about what's new about it, three things that I would highlight. The first one is it has significantly more memory and processing power. And why we think that's important is because as you start to think about the types of problems that customers want to solve, you start to think about the types of applications that can be written, and to be able to have those live on the device itself is critical. And so when we start thinking about processing power and user memory, it's truly turning that reader into an IoT device where you can have complex applications residing on it, so you can start doing really, really interesting things at the spot where the data is being generated. And so that's the first thing we look at is truly making an RFID reader, an IoT device, and giving it that incremental horsepower from a processing and memory standpoint. The second thing that I would really highlight is performance. And when we think about performance, the way you'll hear me describe it, or you'll hear kind of an RFID terminology, is called sensitivity. And when we think about sensitivity, it's how can I read that tag, right? How quickly can I read the tag? From what distance can I read the tag? And frankly, can I read the tag, right? If I have a pallet that has 40 items on it, and I have tags on all 40 cases, can I read all 40 cases? And when you think about RFID, it works as a system between the endpoint IC that's in the label, as well as the reader itself. The R700 has 10 dB more sensitivity than any other reader in the market today, which you start thinking about what that can enable. I tend to think of it as its margin, right? It gives you margin. Those use cases where today maybe RFID was struggling or challenged a little bit to be able to solve, or maybe you were getting 90% accuracy and you wanted to get 99% accuracy. That margin is critical. And so that incremental sensitivity performance is significant, as well as maintaining and reading that fast, right? Because that sensitivity is great, but if you're not acquiring that data quickly, that can be tricky or challenging. And so having both of those is the second thing. The third thing that I would call out, and it's tied into that performance, but it's basically, it enables you to future-proof. I mentioned a moment ago that the way the RFID system works is it's a combination of the sensitivity of the tag, which reflects the energy or the signal that the reader sends back to the reader. And so when you think about the reader, it's really how big is its ears to be able to listen to that reflection of the energy that's coming back from the tag. Today, the R700 has more sensitivity than what any tag in the market can provide. And so the third thing that we are really excited about is we've built a reader that's future-proofed. And so as we think about, both us and others in the market are going to continue to bring to the market more and more sensitive endpoint ICs. And if you start having more sensitive endpoint ICs, they're going to be able to reflect energy. And so as that reader sends it, that tag is going to be able to reflect it. It's going to wake up and send the signal back and say, I'm here, and transmit its data. If you don't have enough sensitivity at the reader level, the next generation tags, you won't be able to take advantage of that increased performance at the endpoint IC level. And so because the R700 has made such a leap in performance, not only can you realize some of that today, but you're also going to be, it's future-proofing for tomorrow when new technology comes out that's going to be more and more sensitive. It's going to be critical. And so if I was just going to highlight the three things of why does it matter for a customer, it would really be those three things. It's that increased memory processing power, kind of making it a true IoT device. The second thing would be that just increased performance at a 10 dB more than anything in the market today. And then the third thing it's tied into that is the future proofing, and really setting up well for solving problems today, but also ensuring that that technology can be used in the years to come as you potentially upgrade your tags to take advantage of the sensitivity that comes with that.
Very good, very good. And to, I guess 10 dB is just to be clear, that is a profound increase. It's not marginal at all, and something that we're excited and seeing the results in our testing so far. So if we're to step outside of supply chain, maybe being Supply Chain Geek Day, but if we're to step outside of the supply chain for a little bit, what other segments are you seeing customers realize ROI with RAIN RFID?
Yeah, if we step outside of supply chain, I'd say a couple ones that I would highlight. One, I would highlight retail. And when I say retail, it's a little tricky because a lot of retail is in the supply chain as well. And so, but I would say when I say retail, both in store as well as in the supply chain, and specifically as retail is receiving items into the store, being able to understand what I have, where, how much, when is it going to be there is critical, right? And not to bring this back to the whole pandemic or COVID, but the online experience is critical. And so being able to know what inventory I have where is critical. So we've seen retail be a huge segment for us. Healthcare is obviously one. There was a lot of pressure put on healthcare of trying to understand where assets were, right? Masks, I need to know where masks are. Ventilators, I need to know where they are. RAIN RFID can be a great technology to help with that. When you combine that with applications like what barcoding provides, you can have a really powerful solution to try to track where assets are. So healthcare is another segment we see taking off. And the other one that I would maybe highlight is aviation. It's bag tracking, things of that nature. For those that fly Delta Airlines, if you actually pull back your label, the bag tag that goes on your bag when you check into Delta, that's RFID enabled. And there's more and more airlines that are starting to do that now. And so if I was going to highlight a few, and I would add in manufacturing, but I would probably lump manufacturing into the overall supply chain kind of overarching umbrella. But for us, it's really the other ones outside of supply chain, I'd really say is retail, it's healthcare, it's aviation. Those really are the big ones. And then obviously supply chain and manufacturing continues to be an incredibly strong and robust market for us.
Very good. Very good. Again, I don't see any questions out there for us right now. I do have one thing that maybe, we've talked about RAIN RFID in the past, and a lot of people have heard RFID obviously in the past, but RAIN RFID might be new to some. Can you talk a little bit about what RAIN RFID is, and why it's important?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So RAIN RFID. So RAIN is an acronym, and it's essentially an abbreviation of kind of the radio, kind of radioactive and radio signals. It's an abbreviation. I won't even try to explain all the different words of what it means, because if you really want to talk about geeky, you can look up what RAIN is short for, and that would really make you a geek. But what the technology is you can think of it as this passive technology, and so that means it's no battery, and it's the reader sends a signal to the tag. The tag then reflects that signal back to the reader and says, here's my identity, right? And so here's my EPC, here's my identity, and it reflects back. When you think about RFID, what separates RAIN is a couple things. Number one, it's passive, because within RFID, there's both active and passive. So that's the first differentiation, is that RAIN is passive. The second thing is there's really three primary types of RFID. There's LF, or low frequency, there's HF, high frequency, and there's UHF, or ultra high frequency. RAIN RFID is in the ultra high frequency band. LF tends to be the shortest distance that you can get reads. If you think about livestock tracking, you want to tag a cattle, or you want to tag a sheep, and I just going to read it real close proximity, it tends to be LF. HF is a little bit, you can get a little bit more read range, but you're still talking about maybe a foot. It tends to be what's used in hotel key cards, is HF. And then ultra high frequency is what RAIN is, and it's what people really use to drive efficiencies and automation. It's where the technology that you can use at the dock door, where you can get read ranges up to 15 meters. You can start reading thousands of items per second, and you can do it without a direct line of sight. And so when you start thinking about RAIN RFID, it's synonymous with ultra high frequency passive RFID. And it's what enables you to be able to achieve the 15 meter read rates, thousands of items per second, and doing it without a line of sight. So if I come back to that example I gave at the very beginning, where you think about a conveyor belt, that box is coming down, that label could be face down on the conveyor, it could be facing backwards, it could be facing forwards, up, or either side. And the technology, you can, with the RAIN RFID technology, you can still read that. You've got to be thoughtful. There are certain things that the signal can't penetrate, right? Metal, is one, liquids are another. And so you have to be thoughtful, but outside of that, you can really start gaining a lot of efficiencies and a lot of gains. So hopefully that summarizes a little bit. I don't know, Pat, if there's anything else you would add to that description, but that's how I would summarize it in a real quick synopsis.
Yep. No, that's a nice summary of RAIN RFID, and it really to put the importance on it is understated, I think. We had one question come in here real quick about sensing tags. Basically, to paraphrase, when do you start seeing temp force type tags not being just a proof of concept, but actually being incorporated into solutions? And are you seeing that today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So maybe I'll just maybe expand upon the question, just for those that maybe aren't familiar with what the intent of the question is. So today, if you think about the RFID tag, it has an identity. So much like the barcode, I can give an identity and say this is what the item is, and give it its identity. And when you read it, that identity will transmit, and then you can put that in the business application. Where the question's going is, in addition to the identity, are there other variables that you could give about that item? So let's say you're in cold storage, and you have you're tracking items that need to be at a certain temperature, and you want to make sure that not only to know what that item is, but know, does that item's temperature maybe never go below a certain threshold or never go above a certain threshold. And so adding in addition to the identity, adding in other variables such as temperature, or I think I heard vibration or something of that sort. So today there are some RAIN RFID technology out there that can do temp sensing. So that's in the market today. I wouldn't say it's mainstream, but that exists today. At IMPINJ, today, we personally, as IMPINJ, we do not have a temp sensing tag. That's something that we've been in development for, but there are other solutions in the market that can do that can then be read by IMPINJ readers or other readers that are in the market. And so today there is some availability of that. They're both, and I guess one clarification, when we think about temp sensing specifically, you can think of it, you'll hear a term called on die, which basically means the semiconductor, the silicon, actually can do temp sensing on die. That is what's not as mainstream. Today, you can take I shouldn't say any, but you can take some generic RFID tags, and then connecting through a PCB bus, you can turn that general tag into a temp sensing tag as well. So that's really the difference. So I'd say today there are a couple, I think there's one product out there that does on die temp sensing, and then there's a handful of options where you can do an external. And then for IMPINJ, there are, in our roadmap, there are a handful of different other benefits we're adding into the endpoint IC from a sensing standpoint, whether that's temperature, whether that's shock, vibration, authentication, things of that nature. There's lots of things that are on our roadmap personally to bring those to market.
Very good, very good. And as far as questions, there's one follow-up here. Where does RAIN RFID fit within the concept of a digital twin and the broader Internet of Things?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you think about a digital twin, different customers, different people think about it in many different ways. So I'll do my best to try to answer the question, but I think I probably won't do it justice because there's so many different ways you can think about a digital twin. But I'll start with one example. We have one client who is leveraging the technology in their operations, and they're getting value out of the technology in the operation itself. Which is great. So they're tracking items as they move throughout their supply chain, and that's bringing real world operational value today. But the other thing that it's enabling them to do is they're able to do modeling. So they're able to, when you think about a digital twin, one way to think about a digital twin is I can now start using information that's active in my environment and start doing modeling and doing the what if games. And so what they're able to do is not only can they get value today, but they can also start taking that data in and saying, okay, if I tweaked this process, what would happen? if I did this change over here, what would happen? And so by having a digital twin, you can start doing process mapping and value stream mapping to try to see, maybe you get a Kaizen event that comes out of it, or something of that nature where you can drive that. So that's one way that we see clients talking about digital twin. Another way is physically having a data or having a pointer to something in the cloud. That's the other way we see it, where you have an item that has an identity, but you also then create a pointer to the cloud where maybe you store more information in the cloud about that item, and that then you link the pointer that's on the item to the more robust data set that's up in the cloud. And so we see clients thinking about a digital twin in that way as well. And both of those are very valuable. They're two different interpretations of a digital twin, but they're two areas where we see lots of clients getting value out of that concept.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. Jennifer, I don't see other questions. I think,
no, I think
unless you have any.
them all. They were coming up in a couple different places, so good job on getting them done. And Todd, thank you for taking the time on your road trip and going out to adventure to join us today. We really appreciated it. And Patrick, great conversation. As always, learning more and more from all of our SMEs.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Todd. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having myself and IMPINJ being a part of this.
Yes. Have a good afternoon, everyone.